Tucker Max, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that uh, I was really excited to get you as one of the early guests on our fatherhood podcast. When I brought your name up, my wife looked at me and was like, "Isn't that the guy who slept with all the women and wrote about it?" And I'm like, "It
Uh,
is," but I think he has a little bit of a different perspective now, and maybe even because of that, has a great perspective to share with other dads out there.
uh,
So that actually might be a good place to start. I would love a lot. You've shared with the world what the life of Tucker Max looked like, circa, like 2008. But what does a day in the life of Tucker Max look like here in 2020? Which might not be a good kind
yeah,
of
no.
average, but 2020 is is
2020
what
has
it
been
is.
actually a great year for me in a lot of ways. I feel bad saying it because many people have not had a good year,
Yeah.
but I have. So an average day for me is I wake up probably about 6:30 because I've got a 1-year old or 14-month-old, and he likes to get up with the sun. And so my deal with my wife is, because our kids co-sleep till they're about a year. And
Hmm.
so he's not co-sleeping anymore, but he sleeps like not in our bedroom, but we have this massive walk-in closet. So we put him in there so we can hear him, but we're getting him used to sleeping alone, but still close to us. Right.
Nice. And you said, how
And
old is he? Did you say?
14 to 15
Okay.
months. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
I have a
he's
little one who's 8 months, so
right.
you're a little ahead of me.
Yeah. And so he'll wake up and he'll fuss a little bit. I go get him because my deal with my wife is when they're in bed, when they're co-sleeping, she breastfeeds them, she handles them because there's no reason for me to wake up, right?
Right.
Like our kids are breastfed. Uh, I don't add anything to that situation. And so she doesn't wake me up, right? Like I've never understood these people like, oh, we both get up when the kid wakes up at 3 a.m. Like, why the hell for? It makes no sense. And so,
We did that
but
for about a week, and then we realized that
right,
we were
it's a
just
terrible
both
decision.
miserable people.
uh, but the deal is because she gets up with the kid at night, I wake up with the kid in the morning, and then she can sleep in as much as she wants,
Mm,
right? And so, which is fine. I think we both win with that. So
yep.
then he wakes up at 6:30. I get up with him, and then our other two, we've got a 6-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. They sleep together in the same room. Not because we're poor. We got all kinds of other bedrooms, but they like sleeping together, and
That's
it's like
awesome.
okay, cool. So they have bunk beds, and they have the best time. And it's funny. It's like once a week the boys, the bishop six, he'll get a little tired of his sister's bullshit and he'll like go sleep in a different room, which is pretty funny. But so then they get up and then I'll make, tea, and then I'll make, their breakfast, oatmeal or eggs or whatever. And then wife usually gets up 7 or 7:30. And then we kind of have a nice calm morning. And then maybe about 8 o'clock, we have a household manager. And so she kind of like a maid, but she does a lot more stuff.
Hmm.
She shows up around 8. She takes the kids to school. And so we just have a normal, like, I always laugh at the people who are like, here's my 17-step morning routine. I'm like, either you don't have kids
Right.
or you're a liar or you're a complete neurotic. One of the three. And I
Yeah.
know most of the people who are big morning routine people, and they are one of those three. Like, and I know them. Like, I can go down the list. Like, you name a morning routine person, I probably know them personally. I know them well,
Sure.
and I can tell you where they fit. If you have kids, in my experience, kids are like people get all upset about how they disrupt your life, and it's like, well, it's like getting angry every day when the sun comes up. It's like it's going
Hmm.
to come up every day.
Yeah.
Maybe change your approach to it, right? And
Right.
so we've set up our morning so that like it's calm and enjoyable, and we enjoy. I mean, I have an hour and a half every day with my kids that like I sit with them. I'm not on my computer. I'm not, maybe I have sports that are on the background back when sports used to exist, but like but like I'm with them and I'm hanging out with them, and we'll talk and we do stuff and we do whatever, and it's like just a fun, enjoyable, relaxing way to kind of approach the day.
Hmm.
And then we do have like sort of set rules, like, because like our bishop loves Call of Duty and Vaughn likes her iPad. And so like they're allowed to watch it if they got to eat all their breakfast, right? They have to get dressed for school, and then they have to the room has to be picked up, right? And so like half the days they don't feel like doing that stuff, so they don't get the iPad or the video game, and the other half of days they really want to do it, so they get all their stuff done and they do it, right?
Yeah.
And either one's a win,
right?
And so, yeah, no, I'm a big believer in having calm, fun, relaxing interactions and setting your life up that way. So that's an average morning.
Nice. Yeah, no, I love it. We do something similar. So, my wife will always take the first feeding. We do about 50% breastfeeding versus bottle. So then if the baby gets up again, then I'll jump in there. But usually she makes it till 5 or 6 that second time.
Yeah.
And so by then it's just starting the day off. So it works pretty well. And then I love that morning time too, because then my wife will sleep in because she's been up doing her thing, and I'll be with the baby, and it's just kind of our daddy-daughter time. So it's a cool time just to kind of hang out. I don't feel the pressure of emails calling to me of trying to do shit. So it could just be without having to make a super conscious effort of not picking up the phone. It could just be an easy time to just have that one-on-one. Good practice for later in the day.
I have my phone, my charger is by the door. So that way, like, I put my phone there and it's charging, and then I just don't, if it's there, then I'm not like some Benedictine monk. I'm going to pick the fucking thing up, right?
Right.
So what I do is I just put it by the door where it's charging, and then I just don't get up and get it. And then by 8 o'clock when the kids leave, like, I'm like, oh, okay, now it's time to go start work or whatever. And there was nothing I needed to do for the first hour and a half.
Right.
I couldn't have waited till 8 or 8:30. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, nobody expects you to be getting back to their urgent requests before 8:30.
And if they do, to hell with them. I'm firing them as a client. Why didn't you respond to me at 6:53? You might be better equipped to work with someone else.
Yeah, right. So you said you have 3 kids, all under 6 or under. Mm-hmm. So that puts us at quick math 2014 when the first one came around somewhere in there.
July 30th, 2014.
All right, nice. So how did that kind of change your perspective? Were you kind of living the lifestyle that that many of us have read about, and I hope they serve beer, or is this, were you ready for kids at this point?
I'm 45 right now.
Okay.
So like, I'm one of the dudes that, I'm a big believer in this for men, to wait as long as possible to be a dad. Now, there are some people like, I don't know if you know who Ben Hardy is. He's a good friend of mine. Like, he's Mormon, and he was just super mature at like 27.
Sure.
And like, he had kids early, and it works for him, and that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. But for most guys, especially those of us who didn't have good parents and didn't have real good examples in our lives, especially fathers, the longer we wait to have kids, the better parents we are, right? Like, I am so thankful I didn't have kids at like 27 or at 33 or even 35. I wasn't really ready, right? Now, obviously, it doesn't work quite as well for a woman. She's got biological issues, but I'm also a big believer that you need an age split between men and women, simply because women mature way faster than men do. And so I'm 45 and my wife is 36. And we're very, very close in maturity, right? which like, now it took me 9 years split to find a woman. She's like, don't get me wrong, she's a very mature woman, but nonetheless, like, I gotta be married to a woman 9 years younger than me for us to be emotionally, at the same level, which is very common. Whether it's maybe 9's a little extreme, but 3 to 6 year split is often very healthy, both for the woman and the man. It gives the man a lot more chance to get himself established in life, to grow up, to understand what being a man is about, and then the woman can then be with someone who has their shit together at a level that's closer to her. Like, I can't tell you, I'll never forget, man. I dated this woman when I was 25 and she was 24, and this woman's amazing. She's what she's doing now in life is remarkable, but I knew then that she was a baller, and it was like, she stunningly beautiful, really smart, just had her shit together. And like, we were dating, and like, one time after sex, like, I farted under the covers and then like pulled the covers over her head, or the type of shit that you do when you're an immature 25-year-old. And I remember she like looked at me, she gave me like one of those looks, and she's like, "You're going to be a really great boyfriend when you're 30. Not she was wrong.
Yeah.
It was about 38, but I remember getting all upset at her. And the reason I got upset is because she was right. Now, it turns out, it's funny. She ended up, after we broke up, she, about a year later, she started dating a billionaire, married him, and is now like this incredible woman doing this. She was already incredible, was doing a remarkable thing. So turns out she was right. She needed an old guy who had his shit together, who had money. And I had the same thing for me. Like by the time I got to be 36, I think is about when I met my wife, 36 or 7. And I was established, I was mature. So to answer your question, no, dude, the idea that a woman or a child are the thing that's going to get you right is a real dangerous idea. It's happened and it can happen. And if that's how it worked for you, that's cool. But if you're a guy sitting and think, oh, I'm irresponsible and I'm going to do this and that, and I guess when I knock a girl up, then I'll figure it out. It's a dangerous road. I would not do that. Like the way it worked for me, the way it worked for me and the way I've seen it work for a lot of guys like me is you first have to decide that you want to be the type of man that the woman you want to be with wants to be with. Right. And not, in a lot of ways, I was a badass at 35, right? But the woman I wanted to marry she didn't want to be with me, right? And so I had to, for the next year and a half, 2 years, really start working on getting my shit together emotionally, not financially, or, I was famous, all that bullshit, but like the things that matter to really high quality, high status women, which is emotional health, like how trustworthy, how reliable, how stable are you, right? Because you can get away with so much stuff when you're single that just doesn't work in a functional, healthy relationship. And I kind of knew that. This wasn't some shock to me. And so I really put in a lot of emotional work and a lot of therapy and other stuff. And I really got myself on not just, I was on stable footage for a single guy. I just need to be, and then I got to be the type of guy that the woman I would want to marry would want to marry. And then I met my wife. It was like as soon as I was ready, I met her almost. And then we, started our relationship. And then she got pregnant, like but we were about to get engaged. And then she got pregnant. And it was like, all right, fine, no problem. And so by the time Bishop showed up, I was ready. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say I was ready, it's not like he showed up and I had everything dealt with and I had no problems. Absolutely not, man. That kid hit us like a hurricane. And I don't care how ready you think you are. You're not close to ready. Like 0 to 1 with children is the biggest change. When I say I was ready, I meant like I was ready for the hurricane. So it's a difference between like a hurricane's coming. You've got the boards on the windows. You've got everything locked down. The hurricane's still going to hit, and it's still going to cause a lot of problems that you're going to have to deal with. But that's way better than if you're just like outside in the yard and nothing's taken care of and you got no food in the house and it's like, oh, look at this rainstorm. No. Whole different ways for hurricanes to hit. So like I was ready in the way that like you prepare for a hurricane. But it changed. The first kid changes everything, man.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, so my path was a little bit different than yours. I'm sure there's a good mix for folks listening. So we started dating shortly after college. I think I was just such an idiot in college that I got a lot of it out of my system. Yeah, we all are. And then, but I still had a lot of catching up to do. So on the maturity scale. So it took me a minute to get there, but fortunately my wife stuck in there with me and kind of pulled me by my bootstraps and we got there.
Those situations can work. They can. It's just as a dude, don't expect that. Like if you get that and you're lucky and you're like, sometimes like the girl I met when I was 25 and 24, I could have married her and she would have stuck with me. As but it would have been, my life would be totally different, and not necessarily better or worse, just totally different.
Oh, I'm sure. Cause that was before you even started writing the books.
Yeah. It was before all that.
Yeah. So I can imagine, but so you brought up a few interesting things there. One was you mentioned that like guys like me who didn't have a good male role model or good relationship with their dad. You've talked about this publicly before, of kind of having an absent father when you were younger. I'm curious how that's impacted your approach to fatherhood. So not having a strong role model dad in your life, is that something you think about at all now with your kids, or is that something that you try to do things differently due to?
So it's a great question. So for most guys, myself included, if you didn't have a good dad, however that's defined, right? Because there's a lot of ways to be a bad father.
Oh yeah.
My father was both absentee and shitty when he was there. Like, so I kind of got it both ways, right?
Yeah.
The one thing, or the two things, he wasn't physically or sexually abusive, which is great, right? Like at least he didn't have that.
Right.
He was just not there. And when he was there, he wasn't emotionally engaged and didn't care that much. Okay.
Still sucks pretty bad.
It sucks, but it could have been worse, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what happens for most guys is they're like, well, you know, I'm not going to be like my dad. Like that's their parenting philosophy. My dad wasn't there, so I'll be there. Or my dad was X, so I'm going to be negative X, whatever, right? I'm going to be the opposite of my dad. That's okay at the very beginning, but it's not really a sustainable strategy,
right?
Because like just being like, I've been there pretty much every hour of every day for my son physically, but physically being there for a child and emotionally engaging are totally different things. So I really quickly realized, quote, being there for my son is not just staying married to his mom, right? That there's a lot more that came with it. And it's not that I wasn't willing to do it. It's just, I only knew the opposite of what I didn't get. I didn't know how to actually do any of that, right? And so like, it took me, it was very hard for me. My first kid was a boy. My second was a girl. Girl was way easier for me. Like I deal with women, I guess, a lot easier than I do with men. And so like, part of it was she was my second kid too, but like the second one I just took to, and we like had no problems. The first one was really hard because I think all of my issues with my dad that I hadn't resolved, even though I thought I had, the ones that I hadn't came up. Right. So like, I'll give you a really good example.
How soon did that start coming up?
Okay. Immediately. Like pretty much the first month.
Got it.
And so like, I'll give you a really good example. So my mother-in-law, who I get along with amazing, like all the tropes about awful mother-in-laws, I'm like, nah, those don't apply to me. Like I get along better with my mother-in-law than my wife does. And she moved in with us at my invitation because like I said, the kid hit like a hurricane and my wife and I were not ready.
Right.
And
back up. Call the
right. So inviting her was like buying a hurricane shelter. It was amazing, dude. She was, cause she's older, she's retired, she loves kids. So it was like, she came and it was just like a saint, like she saved our lives. And watching my son, and she was there for a year, for the first year of Bishop's life, watching him get doted on and loved and nurtured and caressed and consoled by two women basically constantly, like whenever he needed any sort of love or attention, at least one of them were there, if not both. And so I didn't get that as a kid, man. And so like that brought up a lot of pain in me, dude. And like, I wasn't envious of him or upset at him, like, or mad at him. I mean, it's great. It's awesome that my son's getting this, but it brought up all the feelings in me, right? That I didn't, the loss and the sadness and the grief that I had pushed away my whole life came up. And especially at the time, I wasn't really sure. I didn't quite understand that. This is 6 years ago. I've worked through a lot of, not all of it, but I've worked through a lot of it. But like, I'll never forget, man. Like there was one day where they were both sitting on the sofa, like right next to each other, my wife and my mother-in-law, with Bishop between them, just doting on him, playing with him, and you could just, you can just see the love between a mother and a child, right? Or a grandmother and a child, and you can feel it. And I remember I was sitting on the other sofa and I didn't feel a part. I could walk over there and be part of it. It wasn't, they weren't doing anything bad. No one was doing anything bad. It was bringing up all my own stuff that I hadn't dealt with. And that was rough, man. That was really, really rough. Like, because at the very beginning, I probably was for a little while envious or like, oh, you guys are spoiling him or some of that. And my wife kind of helped me see, no, you're projecting your shit on. Like, that's not going on. There's no way to spoil a 5-month-old baby, right? Like they have to have this much attention to be healthy. This is the way it works. And so then I realized pretty quickly she was right. And so then it led to me having to deal with a lot of my own issues, man. So I don't dump those onto him, you know?
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, because this is something else I've heard you talk about is your experience with various forms of therapy, traditional, non-traditional. And it's something that I think is more talked about in society today, but still I think there's a little bit of this taboo, especially amongst men, of going, especially at, like, on the fringe cases where it's not super obvious that you might need some sort of help. And I think that this is something, like the example you just shared is perfect. Like with dads, where there's some stuff that's just, you know, under in the background, under the hood, that you don't even realize is there. So if it's something you're open to talking about, just kind of your experience with therapy at just a high level, but even more so how it's impacted you as a dad and how it's helped you be a better dad. I think that's an important conversation for guys to hear.
Yeah, dude. I talk about the 3 most important things that I've ever done in my life. One, and I'm not sure the order they go in. One of them is meet and marry my wife, right? Like for any dude, probably the most important decision you're ever going to make, if not number 1, then 2 or 3, is who you marry, right? That's massive. Number 2 was the decision to start therapy. And then I don't know if it's a third decision or 2A. Talk therapy was very important for me. I did 4 years of psychoanalysis going 4 times a week, which is just a form of talk therapy. I tried a lot of other different modalities. It didn't work. That worked really well for me, but it kind of stopped working. And then a couple years later, I found psychedelic therapy. So like a psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So MDMA assisted psychotherapy, and then LSD and mushroom psilocybin assisted psychotherapy, and which are not legal yet, but they're all in stage 3 clinical trials to be legalized and will be soon. I did it underground. You can find it. There's ways to find it. But like those 3 things have been the most important things I've done in my life, especially with regards to everything, but especially with regards to being a good parent. Like there's nothing I could have done. I read every book on parenting, man. I can talk all the theories from this and that, whether, you know, conscious parenting or free range, or go down the list. And a lot of them most parenting stuff, advice is terrible. There's about 10 to 20% that's really good, right? But even if you read all the really good stuff, if you haven't dealt with your own emotions, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to apply, right? It's going to be very difficult for you to actually use. And I'll give you just an absolute crystal clear example, very related to what I just told you. So when Bishop was probably 3, he, you know, like he was standing on, we have a, you know, big kitchen island, like it's huge. And, you know, like with a marble countertop, and we let our kids stand on that. And one of the reasons why is because then they can be eye level with us.
Sure.
And this is one of those weird things. It makes a big difference. Like kids looking up at an adult, like think about it. You meet someone who's 7 feet tall, you feel tiny, it emotionally impacts you. But no, but our kids standing on the islands, one of the reasons we bought this house is that they don't have to feel small. Right? Like they can feel
that's interesting. I like that.
Even though we're obviously we're not peers with our children. We have boundaries and all that sort of stuff. It helps them emotionally develop and develop courage and all that stuff. Anyway, so he's standing on the island and he knocks over a bottle and it breaks. Right? And like, I didn't think I yelled at him. Like when I yell at someone, it's pretty intense. But I said something like, Bishop, watch what you're doing. Look out, or something like that. Right? And again, like thinking in my head, of course I didn't yell at him. I would never yell at my son. But I looked at him and I saw the look on his face. And he looked like he'd been fucking stabbed in the chest with a knife. Like his face had that look. And so what I thought about the way I said something at that point's irrelevant. And I had a decision to make about what kind of man I was going to be, what kind of father. Was I going to acknowledge to myself that I had yelled at my son? And brutally yelled at him, obviously, regardless of what I thought about it, the way he took it was hurtful, brutal screaming, right? And was I going to acknowledge that and then deal with it? Or in order to protect myself and my vision of myself, was I going to rationalize that away? Yeah. Oh, well, he needs to toughen up, or I didn't scream that loud. Was I going to make an excuse, right? And in that moment, I had to decide. Now, here's the thing. You don't just decide in the moment, man. Like all of the work, the therapeutic work I had done up to that point is what had enabled me to make the better decision for my son, which was to admit to myself that I hurt him, intentionally or not, doesn't matter. I did. Right. And then to deal with the issue. And so of course, I went over, I'm like, oh, Bishy, come here, buddy. Come here. And like, he starts crying and I'm like, are you upset? Yeah. And then like, what are you upset about? And he's like, I don't know, like, because he's 3, he doesn't really understand a lot of his emotions. So you kind of have to help him do it. I don't tell him what he feels. I ask him, well, are you sad because daddy yelled at you? Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, like, then, we have a couple household rules. And one of them is if you make a mistake, what do you do if you make a mistake? And the rule is you say you're sorry and you clean it up. He said, say you're sorry and clean it up. I said, okay, well, I'm telling you, I'm sorry, buddy. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Daddy made a mistake. Daddies make mistakes, right? Because we always talk about, we make mistakes as parents. And he's like, yeah, daddies make mistakes. I go, okay, I'm sorry, buddy. And then I held them like, if you can cry if you need to. And then like 30 seconds later, he was fine. Like I felt him. He let that go because and he was fine, right? And it listen, that I feel good about the way it worked, right? But dude, it was like swallowing a turd for me to admit to myself in the moment that I had hurt my son. And even worse, I did to my son exactly what my dad did to me. Right? Oh, I'm never going to be like my dad. Yeah. Well, my dad was a fucking angry yeller.
Yeah.
And then I did that to my son. And so I had to admit that to myself in the moment, right? Because look, if I had apologized 2 or 3 hours later, that's better than nothing. And that would have, been really good, much better than doing nothing. But it's not the same thing as catching it in the moment, especially to yourself, right? Because then if you don't catch, then you're going to tell yourself a bunch of stories. I didn't need to, or this or that, or blah, 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 right? And so, but had I not done therapy, I don't know if I would have recognized it, number one. And even if I had, I don't know if I would have had the courage and the emotional maturity to make that decision in the moment. Does that make sense?
It does. No, that's awesome. And that's a really good concrete example of kind of how it's impacted you as a dad. And it's interesting that you bring up psychedelics because, we're 2 for 2 on these last podcasts. You might know Kyle Kingsbury. He's out there.
Kyle lives right down the street from me, dude. Yeah, Our kids go to the same school.
So then you won't be surprised that it came up in the conversation with Kyle.
Of course. Uh-huh.
But it's just interesting. And I feel like it's a bummer that it still is underground, but it sounds like we're not too far out from that being something more, at least legally widely available.
It will. It should be a couple years. Yeah. Right. It's going to be in Canada. It's going to be a few months, and in America, we'll be a few years behind. But I'll tell you honestly, if you want to find it, you can find it. Like I have a piece. You just Google Tucker Max MDMA. I wrote 9,000 words about my first 2 MDMA sessions. And then also, like, I don't say it on there, but if any of your listeners, if you guys want to email me, I can maybe potentially, based on where you live and other factors, point you in a few directions where you can probably find someone who can help.
That's incredible, man. That's awesome. Thank you. Another thing I wanted to chat with you about. So you obviously had a ton of success with the books, kind of pre-kids. You had 3 books on the bestseller list all at the same time. You had 3 #1 New York Times bestsellers. Then you kind of graduated from your writing days into your entrepreneur days of helping other people, right? With Scribe. So you've had a lot of success. You continue to have a lot of success in the entrepreneurial business world. And that's one of the, I think, stories that we hear often, and we often tell ourselves about fatherhood is you have a decision to make. Are you going to kick ass and be a world class at your craft or at business, at your job, make a lot of money, or are you going to be there and be home, be with your kids, be an awesome dad? That's really the reason I wanted to start this show, is to dispel that myth and talk to people like you who are doing both. So I would love to understand your approach to balancing or integrating, kind of whatever is the right word for you, the two realms of family and profession, your professional life, and how those are kind of integrated?
It's a great question. So the first step, before I'm going to talk about any actions or plans or whatever, the first step is a mindset. You have to change the story you're telling yourself. If you tell yourself a story that you can't be a good dad and be successful, that's bullshit. That's a story and you're never going.
You won't be a good dad.
It doesn't matter what else you do. Like, you can follow the right plans, but if you believe that the two things are mutually exclusive, then they always will be in your life. Like, all positive change and all action begins with belief, right? And I don't mean this in a woo-woo mystical sense. I mean in a very practical sense. If you don't think this is possible, it's not in your life. Because it is possible. I'm doing it. I know a bunch of other people who are doing it. It's entirely possible. But whether it's possible or not in your life begins with your belief. All right. That's number one. Then number two is, you then have to, once you believe, okay, it's possible, you can say, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I believe I'm going to do it. And I believe it's possible. Okay. That's step one. Then step two is really understanding, what exactly is it you're trying to accomplish, right? Like, be a good dad means what to you, right? Because to me, being a good dad is about, it's really about one thing, honestly. Or it's 80% of it's defined by, do I love my children unconditionally, and do they actually feel that?
That second part's important.
Right. So the two things are combined. They're 1A and 1B.
Right.
Am I loving them unconditionally, and are they feeling that love? Right? Because I grew up with parents who said, I love you a bunch. They didn't fucking mean it at all. And it wasn't even, I don't think they weren't lying to me. They just didn't love themselves. They weren't engaged with themselves. So they can't be with me. Right. So it wasn't personal
capacity.
They were just broken, and broken people can't provide healing environments. That's just not how it works. All right. So that's what number one it means for me is, am I loving my kids, and are they feeling it? Right. And because are they feeling it is the ultimate test. Right. Because I can rationalize and tell myself any story I want about what I'm doing, but the results are what matters. Right. And then the other 20% is, am I helping them become the best people that they can be, or the people they want to be, right? And man, I can even fail at that, because if I love them and they feel that, everything else will take care of itself.
Right.
So that to me is the goal. And so you got to figure out, what is your goal of being a great father and great entrepreneur, right? And you get the same thing with entrepreneur. What exactly am I trying to do?
Yeah. What does success mean to you? What
does it actually mean? What does it look like? Because if you don't define those things, then you are going to be relying on someone else. Either you're using someone else's definition, which probably won't align with what you actually want, or you're going to be chasing a target you don't know what it is. Right? You're not going to hit a target that you don't know, that you're not aiming at.
Yeah. I have a coach. I forget which author said this, but if you're going to climb the ladder of success, make sure it's leaning against the right wall. So it's that exactly. Make sure you know what wall you're climbing.
Exactly. And so both of those things, the parent goal didn't take me too long to get. The entrepreneur business goal took me a while. I'm honestly still not entirely sure I have it nailed. I'm against the right wall. I'm not sure if I'm exactly on the right place on the right wall.
Yeah,
right?
You're on the north-facing wall.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but I don't know if it's at the right window or whatever.
Right.
But like, all right. So what am I trying to get to? And in both areas, be very, very clear on your objective. Then the next step is to look at your life and be like, okay, does my life align with these two objectives? And if not, then you really start making changes, right? So like, looking emotionally, I had to look at in myself, am I showing up emotionally in a way where I connect with my kids and they feel that? And in a lot of ways, the answer was yes, but then also, especially at the beginning, in a lot of ways, the answer was no. Which is, if you have little kids and a really good mom, then the dad can kind of not always be the best emotionally, and things will be fine for a little while, right? Till about 5. And it took me until Bishop was about 4 to really start to
You're close, but
right,
you got there.
I got that. Yeah. Because my wife's amazing, and she's so emotionally connected to our kids, and she is so, I'll tell you, the best measure for a mom, and this is just my idea, although there are a lot of psychologists who agree with me, the best measure for a mom is, do the kids need transition objects? Meaning, like, so a transition object is like a blanket or a teddy or something, right? If the kid needs a transition object, I think that the parents, but usually especially the mom at that age, didn't emotionally connect enough with the kid, so they need something else to be that proxy, right?
Is that a Tucker Max theory, or is that rooted in something?
It is. Although
okay.
there are quite a few. No, there are quite a few psychologists who.
Okay.
It is a theory that I've read that I think is true.
Got it.
There's very few stuff I come up with on my own. Mainly, I just read a bunch, and I'm like, okay, that seems smart. That aligns with reality. Right? So that it's an idea I absolutely espouse.
Okay.
And I've seen it in our kids, that like none of our kids have needed transition objects, and not because of me, but because of my wife. She is incredibly emotionally attuned to our kids and attached to them, and provides an amazing sort of emotional support for them, when they're very little. And it's so crucial for the first 18 months. First 6 months is the most crucial, and then the first 18 is and then 18 months to about 3 years, the mom's still very important, but then dad starts to come in a little, and then about 3 to 4, dad shows up more, and then about 5, dad starts to really fully show up, right? And then really about 7 is, for boys, is when they kind of start to move into the man's world a little bit. And so, like, and I've seen this play out very clearly with my kids, and I had to really realize the way that I wasn't showing up for the kids emotionally, and none of it was about like, oh, I've got to have a better morning routine. All of it was my emotional relationship with myself, right? Because the ways that I don't love myself, or the ways that I'm not connected to myself, or the ways that I'm not emotionally attuned to myself, I can't provide that to the kids. Period. Sure. That's it. And so that's the thing with kids, man, is that if you really ask this question, right? If you really dive in, how do I become a great father, the best father? Then the answer is deal with all your own problems. Like, for real. Like, I don't mean that literally, and that's the only answer, but for the most part, most answers boil down to, you've got to handle your own shit, so that you can show up for them. Oh man, that was rough, especially emotionally. Honestly, the entrepreneur. And what's funny is I talk about them separately, but the underlying emotional issues for both business that restricted my growth in business and as a father were almost always the same. They were very rarely fundamentally different things. In fact, I can't think of an example where they were like completely distinct. There's some emotional things that affected business or family more than the other, but every emotional issue I've had to deal with over the past, let's say 5-6 years, has impacted both substantially.
Well, yeah. And especially depending on your approach to business, if you're treating it like you're building a kind of a family, then, there's going to be some carryover there. But I love that approach of, you got to really figure out what does success in each area look like for you? How can you align your life so that you can hit both of those targets? Is there anything else kind of on that professional family? I use the word, I've been using the word dichotomy, but I feel like it's the wrong word, because
I just look at professional as an extension of life.
Okay.
That's it. Like,
it's just kind of an integrated aspect of your life, same as your family. It's all one thing.
Well, to me, the family's first.
Right.
I am nothing without my family. And I don't mean that literally. Of course, I'm an individual, etc. But I mean, like, the first priority in my life is not me, it is my family. Although I will say, and this is one of those weird paradoxes, even though my priority is my family is my first priority, the way I can show up best for my family is to take care of myself. Right. So I've never liked the idea a lot, a lot of men especially, and although there are a lot of women like this too, so I don't want to discount that, but there are a lot of men who are what I call like martyrs, family martyrs. Like they'll destroy themselves, they'll sacrifice themselves, and I don't mean make sacrifices. They will literally sacrifice themselves for their family. And I always look at them, I'm like, dude, do you think your kids would rather have you or not have you?
Right.
And so like, and even though they're telling themselves they're doing it with the best intentions, and they may be, I'm not a believer in sacrificing myself for my family. Even though they're the first priority, those are not the same thing. I believe in taking care of myself, both because I respect myself and because I want to show up as best possible for my family. Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm 45, right? I'm in pretty great shape. I'm doing fantastic. My son is 6. I'm just making a guess. Let's say he has his first kid at 30, right? Then I'm going to be, what will I be then? 60, I'll be 70 then, right? Yeah, I'll be 70.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I see my grandkid, like I want to be there for my grandson and my granddaughter,
right.
Plural. And so the only way I can do that is to take care of myself.
Yep.
Right. And so like, these ideas are but everyone like nods their head and is like, yeah, okay, I get it. Right. Like I just talked about in the other question, like I kind of gave the overview, but then once you actually start looking at people's time, how do they spend their time? Most of them don't align. Like is a great example is like a friend of mine's a high level, he's a big time executive coach. And he's like, I'll always start off asking CEOs what their objectives are. And then they'll say something like, oh, recruiting is the most important thing in my company. And then they won't ask them. They'll say, show me your schedule. And then they'll look at it and they'll be like, you have 3 hours this week for recruiting. How is that the most important thing?
Right.
Either you're lying to yourself or something's off.
Yeah.
And so if you start with what your goals are for family, right? Then the goal for business, then look at your schedule and look at what you do. And if the things are aligned, then you're probably making great progress. And if they're not aligned, you're not going to make great progress. And if you think they're aligned, but you're not making great progress, you know what it means? They're not aligned. Like there's something that's holding you back that you aren't looking at or seeing, right? That you need to address.
Yeah. I'll preface this with, I absolutely want to make plenty of money in my life, give great experiences to my kids, to my family, all of that. But if I'm not showing up, like when they look at me, I can do that. I can put them on the back burner, spend 16 hours a day working, make a shit ton of money, and give that all back to them and say, okay, now let's spend, 2 weeks a year.
They'd have a terrible childhood.
Yeah. And they'd be miserable because they're looking at us as their dads, as the role model, as the example. And if they see me not taking care of myself, not happy, not living a good life, that's what they're gonna think is the way to model. So
you're not just a role
backwards.
Model. You're not, that's all true. Everything you said is true, but also they want you there with them. They want you sitting there connected with them, playing with them, going for walks, whatever it is you do, right? The time, I don't know any other way to love someone other than to spend meaningful time with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can love someone from afar in theory. I don't know.
You probably still need the time. It has to be, and it can't be permanent, but you still need to hop on a Zoom call or something. There needs to be some time shared. So
I don't know any other way to love.
Yeah.
And maybe I have it wrong.
Yeah. Speaking of time, I know we're bumping up against it here shortly, but there's one other question I wanted to make sure we get to, because I think that your past really lends a unique example to this. So you wrote these books about you drinking, sleeping with women, doing all the crazy stuff that you did as a young man. So I think that's a macro example of an experience that a lot of dads, especially, so I'm 31, I had Facebook all through college. There are, posts, photos, things of me doing stupid stuff out there. I've gone through and untagged myself, but we know it all still exists. I am confident that there's going to be an app or program that our kids can do some sort of pay $20 and here's all the stupid shit that your parents did and put on the internet 20 years ago. And then they can just go and show like, here, dad, here's what you were doing. So you kind of have just a like inflated example of this because there's several books of the things that, that you were living out. So just given the world we live in with our own social media habits, I'm sure there's a whole rabbit hole of kids in social media, but I'm curious how you think about that because, you know, your kids will see your books. They will be exposed to kind of your life before them. How do you think about how you're going to approach that?
I think it's great. Them? I think it's fantastic. Why would it not be?
Yeah. Well, so I think that it's important, and I want to just understand what you think your conversation will be with them. Like, are you going to hand them that book when they turn 14 and say, check this out, here's what dad did, let's talk about it? Or
like or the thing I don't do with my kids, the thing I don't do with my kids at any point is push things on them.
Okay.
Right? You know, if they ask or they want to read it or what, of course they can read it. It's fine with me. I mean, they got to learn to read first. They're still little bit, but it's fine. Totally fine with me, of course. And then I'll have a frank discussion with them. The underlying, and I'm not accusing you of this, but the underlying assumption of every question about this is, are you going to tell your kids the truth? And my answer is always yes. For most people, the answer is no, because they have been socialized and taught that you don't speak real, full truth, that you have to hide things. Right. Okay, you want to live like that? Live like that. That's fine. I'm not going to. It's part of the reason I'm so successful is because I'm always willing to speak the truth. It's hard. There's a price to pay for that. And it is a steep price, but there's also a lot of reward. Yeah. It's not a path most people are willing to take, but I am.
Well, I think I just wanted to hear your approach on it too, because it's something my wife and I talk a lot about, of wanting to be very honest with our kids. And she coaches volleyball, and we've seen it with 13-year-old girls that she coaches. There's the parents who are very honest and open with their kids, and they have open, honest conversations about, you know, these 13-year-old girls and what's going on with the boys and sex and all this different stuff. And then there's the ones that are oblivious. And so I saw this before we were even thinking about having kids. So I think it's your story is just a little bit unique, but only because
I wrote it down.
It's more in your face.
You have the same stories.
Yeah. Right. It's just not published.
Right. Exactly. And so like, it's very simple, man. Like the only people who want to hide stuff are the ones who are ashamed of it. I'm not going to dump any shame on my kids. I'm just not going to. I just don't believe in it. Shame is a life-denying emotion. And it's not that I don't have it. All humans have it. Of course, it's part of our biology, but it is not something that I am going to dump on them. Yeah. And I'm going to tell them, of course I did things that I'm embarrassed by, or like I shouldn't have done, or what. I'll have a very frank discussion. Dad, why'd you do that? And we'll talk about it. It won't be that different than our conversation here. You know, like I'll tell them the same truth I tell everyone else. Like my kids are 6 and 3.5. They know Santa doesn't exist, right? Not because I'm ruining Christmas for them, not because they don't get presents. They get presents, but I'm not going to teach them that the people that they're supposed to trust and rely on most are unreliable liars. That's bullshit. Yeah. That's how you condition someone to live in a totalitarian state. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm just not. I'm not going to lie to my children. It's one of the, we have like a set of household rules and principles. And number one is we tell the truth. Santa's not excluded, and neither is my past.
I love that. No, I think it's an awesome number one pillar. So Tucker, I know you got to jump here in a minute, but do you want to take a minute? I think what you're doing over at Scribe is epic. I think you guys have created some amazing things in the world. Can you, do you want to take a few minutes just to tell folks about what you guys are doing over there?
Yeah. So if you want to write a book, we kind of created the best process. And obviously like our high-end agency is pretty expensive, starts at like 36,000 and goes up. But we just launched Scribe Book School, which basically teaches every single thing we do, full courses that other companies charge thousands of dollars for less good versions of it. We have the full course for free on our site. Just go to scribebookschool.com, and it teaches you, if you want to write a book, we got a nonfiction and a memoir course, everything you want to learn. Totally, the info is totally for free. We have coaching programs, other stuff you can do that's way less expensive, but you don't have to do any of that stuff. It is the number one source for information about book writing.
That's dope. Awesome. Where else can people find you if they want to follow along?
I'm on all the normal social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate being here, Tucker. Thanks for taking the time to talk fatherhood with us.
Thanks, man.